I want to thank Steve Rowe of San Antonio, Texas, whom I know from the JFK Truth Be Told Facebook page, for helping to set up this interview.
Quorum Radio, baby.
Quorum Radio now on with somebody who is a veritable broadcast legend, none other than Mr. Gary DeLaune. Mr. DeLaune, how many years have you been a broadcaster?
Well, I've been broadcasting since I was 19. My first job was doing station breaks at KTVQ Television in Oklahoma City. The first paying job I had was in Oklahoma City, but the first Texas job was at WFAA in 1960, and then I went to KLIF after 6 months at WFAA, and that changed my career, going to work for Gordon McClendon, who was the innovative genius of the top 40 format. KLIF was the #1 station.
I want to ask you about something you've spoken to people about 1,000 times or more, which is, what happened in Dallas when JFK got shot. Tell us about Dallas before JFK got shot.
Well, there was a group in Dallas led by General Edwin Walker, who was head of the John Birch Society at that time. I knew that was a right-wing organization. He's a retired Army general. And there was an ad I'm not sure which paper, is the Dallas Morning News, the Dallas Times. One paper said, "We welcome you, Mr. President," full-page ad, "We love you." The other paper said, it was critical of Mr. Kennedy. And so looking back on that day, my job was to go to the Trade Mart to join Gordon McClendon, and my job was to join Gordon at the Trade Mart to hear President Kennedy's speech. But I had to do the newsroom duties first, because Roy Nichols and Joe Long were the pool reporters for radio at Love Field as Mr. Kennedy arrived. So it had been raining, and just as Air Force One touched down, the clouds gave way, and we had a sunny sky. And so as the president got out of the airplane and went to the limo, he said, "Let's take the bubble top off. We want to show the president, or we want to show the people of Dallas that the president loves them. And I'm glad to be here." So that's what they did. They took off the top of the limo, and they headed for downtown. Joe Long and Roy Nichols were reporting it. And I had already written my 1 o'clock news. And I said, as if by some political omen, the sun has given way to the rays of sunshine for the president, and he's on his way in the motorcade. Well, that was already written. But since I was by myself before I was to go to the Trade Mart, Gordon was already at the Trade Mart because he was going to be there for the presidential speech. And the rule was, back in the days, in those old radio days, you had a 24-hour reel-to-reel recorder above the news desk. And it was always the rule that when that hotline rang, which was always the red phone under the desk, you were to say, DeLaune, KLIF News, who is this? And my tape is rolling. Well, don't ask me why, but the phone rang, and instead of saying, "This is Gary DeLaune, who is this?" and my tape is rolling, I just said, "KLIF News, can I help you?" Well, the voice on the other side said, "What do you know about shots being fired at the motorcade with the president being hit?" I said, "I don't know, but I'll find out." So I hung up the phone. I had a contact at the PD, because we all in those days were in good relationships with the dispatchers and people in the radio. So I called Dorothy Plimpton, who was the woman dispatcher. I said, "Dorothy," I told her what I just heard. I said, "I've just been told that the president has been shot." And she said, "Yes, we're checking that out, and we'll have further report." Well, I went on the air immediately. According to Ferris Rookstool of the FBI, who was the analyst studying the Warren report for many, many years, he called me in 2011 and said, "Your report on that particular day I'm not sure the exact time, 12:32:58 or something, I'm not sure. But I interrupted a song called I Have a Boyfriend by the Chiffons. And we went on the air with the old beep, 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 this bulletin from KLIF.
Yeah, right.
3 shots have reported been fired at the motorcade with President Kennedy and Governor Conley being shot. I'll have further reports, stay tuned. And that was the first report, according to Ferris Rookstool. And then Dan Rather and Walter Cronkite both had reports after that. But that was how it all began. And that changed my career, changed my life. And what was ironic was in those days, when everybody listened to KLIF because, you know, it was the station. And 2 FBI agents were listening to KLIF. So was Johnny Brewer at Hardy's Shoe Store on Jefferson. And so was the ticket seller at the Texas Theater. They're all listening to my reports.
Wow.
And so when it came on, and of course, all hell broke loose, as you well know, and the world changed, Dallas changed, and I think political spectrum of our government changed that particular day. And what was ironic was that Jack Ruby was a well-known nightclub operator, the Carousel Club, and he was a big fan of KLIF. He hung around KLIF. So there was a young guy in Dallas who was in radio named Steve Eberhardt, and he's got everything cataloged and logged from the time the president arrived. He's had one of the best chronological histories I've ever seen, and he's also been in touch with Ferris Rookstool over the years, and Ferris has just been a volume of information over the years, and he has helped me so many ways when I needed to double check a fact or a figure, because the guy studied it for 9 years, thousands of pages. So it was just luck, say, by the way. I was just doing my job that particular day. So
absolutely. So, but I want to ask you, after the initial announcement of the shots, how many other announcements did you make before?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it was an incessant bulletin or additional information. And I figured up, I was by myself for maybe 45 minutes or so before Joe Long and Roy Nichols got back. And I fed 350 stations around the world that particular day, that afternoon.
Wow.
Everybody called KLIF because, this was a new innovation. Everybody heard of KLIF. And I think it was Don Stores, was that his name, on the Seattle station and chain of stations. And this is an interesting fact. He was there, I guess, to cover the president too. And he was also a rock and roll format leader in the West Coast. He was listening to KLIF. So what he did, he called his station in Seattle and put the phone down by the radio in the hotel room. And so they carried KLIF the rest of the day, just by telephone. And I thought that's pretty ingenious on his part. But,
amazing.
There were so many people that called, and I couldn't even tell you.
Let me ask you, Mr. DeLaune, about you. So then you were told, I guess, to go to the Dallas City Jail, right?
Well, no, I was to go to the trade. Yeah, when Gordon got back from the trademark. And here's the thing, don't forget, this was back in the day when you didn't have cell phones. So all these thousands of people were waiting at the trademark for the president to arrive, and Gordon was over there. And he called in, I guess, from a payphone or whatever. And that's when he came back to the station. So, and when Joe Long and Roy Nichols got back, Gordon said, Gary, you have all the contacts at the police department, so you're going over there. So that's what I did at the afternoon then. And I fed a report every few minutes. And Jack Ruby was an insignificant little guy who went to the Carousel Club, as you well know. And he was a groupie. He liked to be involved with all of the media guys. And he'd gone to the Dallas Morning News And so he didn't stay there very long. And then he came to KLIF because he knew Russ Knight. Russ Knight was the nighttime DJ, and he knew Jack well. They used to, on Saturday nights, they would go out to the Cotton Bowling Palace and bowl with all the strippers because there was nothing to do in Dallas in those days. It was the only facility that was open, the Cotton Bowling Palace out at Inwood and Lemon Avenue. So anyway, so Jack came to KLIF. Well, I had already gone to the police department in the meantime, and so he became kind of a nuisance. He wanted to be somebody, and he actually would pick up the phone and say, "Jack Ruby, KLIF News, how can I help you?" So I guess he got to be a nuisance because I wasn't there. But so they said, Jack, do something. So what can I do? So someone said, well, look, this was several hours after the shots. And they said, Gary DeLaune's been off the police department for hours. He can't get out. He's up in the press room. He hadn't had a drink or a sandwich or anything. He said, yeah. So he goes to a place called Phil's Delicatessen on Cedar Springs, Jewish delicatessen, where he used to hang out anyway. And so he ordered a sack full of corned beef sandwiches. And he was going to bring one to me and the cops in the police department. So Jack knew the police department, and I was on the third floor. Well, to get to the third floor, you had to go up the steps and then take the elevator. But Jack went behind the steps on the first floor into the police lineup room where the cops had their locker room. And he went into the big lineup room, and he kept saying, has anybody seen Gary DeLaune? Anybody seen? Well, about that time, here came the officers with the suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald. And so Jack forgot all about Gary DeLaune. And he stood in the back of the room. There were some shots on some of the network cameras. It shows Jack in the back of the room. And they put Lee Harvey on stage, and he gets the Marxist sign and all that stuff, you know. And they questioned him up on the stage. So that's when he said he got the idea to be the avenging angel for Jackie Kennedy. And when both Jim Lavelle and Patrick Dean had both taken him upstairs, and they said, why'd you do it, Jackie? He said, because I want to kill that SOB for Jackie. So, you know, he always wanted to be a big shot, and he was a little insignificant Jewish guy from Chicago, and he liked to have the girls around him, and Jack was just insignificant, but a part of history that robbed America of knowing why Lee Harvey Oswald did what he did.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Do you remember the moment that you heard about the death of J.D. Tippit?
Well, yeah, because I was putting out a bulletin, as was Roy Nichols. And it so happened that, as I said, Johnny Brewer, who was 23 years old, a manager of Hardy Shoe Store in Oak Cliff on Jefferson, he was a young guy, so naturally all the young people were listening to KLIF. So he was listening to the description, be on the lookout for a white Anglo male, about 5'10", 165 pounds, dark hair, believed to be the suspect in the shooting of President Kennedy. Well, J.D. Tippit was on patrol in Oak Cliff. And now they don't know, because no one was able to ever talk to him about it, but they theorized that he was driving along and he saw this. Lee Harvey had taken a bus back to his rooming house at 310 North Beckley in Oak Cliff. That's where he lived with 8 other guys, because he and Marina were separated and she was staying with a friend. But anyway, he had gone upstairs, changed clothes, and the landlady saw him come down in a hurry. She said, oh, Lee, I see you've changed clothes. You're in a hurry. And so he races out, and he's hustling along the sidewalk, they think. And so JD apparently saw him. In those days, William, you will know that no automatic windows in police cars in those days. You know, I'm sure he had to lean over and roll down the window, and they think that he said, hey, young man, come around here. I want you to give me some ID. So Lee Harvey came around the front of the car, and just as JD was stepping out, Oswald shot him 3 times, shot him another time on the ground. So he shot him 4 times. And JD never got to reply or anything else. He lay there dying in the street. And just about, maybe 15 or 20 yards, there were a group of neighbors who were all Hispanic, and they saw this happen. And then Oswald races on down the street and discards his jacket in a trash can at a service station. And that's when he goes in front of the Hardy shoe store and kind of lurks as he goes from window to window. And Johnny Brewer had heard the description and he saw this suspicious looking guy. And so as Lee Harvey made his way past the shoe store at the front of it, he rushes into the Texas Theater and didn't pay. And so Johnny Brewer says, "Hey, did he just run in here?" And the ticket seller said, "Well, yeah, he just didn't pay." And so that's when he went back and called the police. And they came and went in the back door of the Texas Theater, and the 5 officers then arrested him. He had the same gun that he'd shot Tippit with. And as they pulled it out, there were 3 or 4 officers around. Nick McDonald, M.N. McDonald, grabbed him first. And now this is what Nick told me, William. When he pulled the gun out and was going to pull the trigger, he stuck his hand in between the hammer and the pin, and therefore it couldn't fire it. And then that's when he hit him up here, and you see in the pictures of Oswald, he's got this big black eye. And they, of course, arrested him and took him into custody. And I said, "What did he say, Nick?" And he said, all he said was, "This is it."